There are different types of racism. There is interpersonal racism, where you discriminate on another person because of their demographic. Then there is institutional racism, which is when rules and regulations cause another group of people to experience something unfairly. I'll give you two examples using algorithmic bias. There was a camera company that had an anti-blink feature, and it was supposed to not take a photo if you were blinking. However, when this got released to the Asian communities, Asian countries, it never took a photo. And that was because they lacked having people with those traits on their development team or on their testing team. So they thought it was good and they released it, and then a whole demographic of people experienced something differently than everybody else. Or the facial recognition system. When you log into a computer with your face, there were issues where people with darker skin, it would not register their face. And again, that is because the people who developed the program, or whether they used training input or data input, they lacked perspective of other people and their lived experience. It was a lack of perspective, and that lack of perspective led to them creating something and not taking in those other perspectives. So then when they released it, it ran into issues. These were not created intentionally. It was a lack of perspective and knowledge that led to it. That's what institutional racism is. And then there's internal racism, which is when you don't even realize that you're racist, right? And it's not that you're discriminatory, but it is that you have been raised in a system that creates differences in perspective based on other people's demographics. And you project your experience. If you're the demographic people that are benefiting from status, you're assuming that everybody experiences reality the way that you experience it, and you project that expectation onto other people. So when other people complain, you unintentionally gaslight them and say, no, you're wrong, that's not at all what's happening, right? Because I didn't experience it like that means you didn't experience it like that, right? Because you lack their perspective. And then when you combine all these things together, you have systemic racism. And when people say that certain demographics of people can't be racist, they are referring to systemic racism, because anybody can be interpersonally racist. Anybody can discriminate on another person and treat them differently based on how they look. There is no group of people that are just immune to that. And that's the issue, is we are painting it like it is. We're painting it like, no, this group of people can't be racist, right? And I have run into superiority groups of non-white people, and they say things about how their group is superior than, them, that they're better at sports, they're smarter, and they say all these things without even thinking about it, without understanding just how wrong the things that they're saying are. That the things that they are saying are just as wrong as the things that a white supremacist says, but they have this ideology that I can't be racist, right? But you can. You can be interpersonally racist. And in order to be a supremacist, you have to be a degree of racist. Unless it's not racial related, right? I don't really believe in race, but we're using the term, right? Like if it's based on sexism, well then it's not, right? And how do you talk to somebody who has these supremacist ideas, right? Who paints the YT community as this horrible group of people, but also has the flip side ideology, the supremacist ideology of the triple K. The only difference is they don't have the power for that ideology to actively influence those people's lives unless they come into contact with them, like on the street or something like that. What I fear is it's possible for, instead of us finding harmony and finding balance and acknowledging past atrocities and letting go and letting our children grow up together, there's people who just can't let the past go. They want to hold the next generation of people accountable and hold that weight over them. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a swap, and the group that is being oppressed now is going to be the oppressor later, especially with the type of ideology that you can't be racist. That's a dangerous ideology. That is like believing that you are incapable of being corrupted. If you believe you are coming from a moral high ground and you believe you are incapable of being corrupted, you're going to get to a position to where you're going to start giving excuses as why you're allowed to do things, because you know what's right for everybody else, so you can do this thing even though these people will suffer. And that's literally what corruption is. And if you hold it in your ideology that you cannot be corrupted, you will not self-reflect, you will not question what you're doing, and you will commit corruptive actions.